Hello everyone, Giltar here with part 2 of my review of the 1:144 scale Real Personal Trooper Type 1, otherwise known as R-1. Now this time we're going to be looking at the vehicle mode of the R-1 mech, and as you can see it's pretty basic, very typical of maybe more older fashioned Gundam styled vehicle modes. And by that I mean you can obviously see that this is a humanoid robot that's been folded up to make it look in some way like a vehicle of some sort. Now for those who are more maybe nitpicky, or someone like myself who has a background in being a fan of Transformers, where they are, quote unquote robots in disguise, those like myself will keep an eye out for things called kibble. Kibble is basically obtrusive elements of a robot's humanoid form, or normal form, that is seen in vehicle mode. So things like, obviously these are legs that are at the back of the sort of jet or space fighter mode. These are arms, you can see that. Things like that I usually I do not like, because again, from my background as a Transformer fan, I don't like seeing kibble. I like the concept of good robot design that can look like a vehicle, mostly as a seamless design. However, at the same time, I keep in mind that this is not a Transformer. The vehicle mode doesn't have a dual purpose of disguising the robot. You're usually not wanting to, or rather your intent is not to hide that, this is an R1 robot. Most people will know that when they're encountering this. So that's not a big deal for me. However, at the same time, it's not the best looking vehicle mode, to be honest. Even amongst other vehicle modes from Gundam and such, this one doesn't look as good, in my eyes at least, as something like the Wave Rider of Zeta Gundam. So that's too bad. But I mean, it's not an issue with the model itself, it's just the design of the R1 character or mecha, basically. Now, the parts that are left over from the robot mode, when you sort of take it apart and transform it, I'll show you guys that right now. So first up is the head, neck, and collar components. You've got two parts from the shield, or basically the nose cone part here. This is like the arm peg holster thing, and this is actually the back plate of the shield component that you have to remove in order to get it into this mode. We also have the hip and pelvis component, and the fist or hands, and finally this sort of small piece of plastic. It was basically the top part of the chest. And so not too many parts overall that you have to sort of separate, but again, it's not a true transforming robot, so you do, if some people don't like that process of taking a model apart, then yeah, unfortunately you're not going to like this either. Now, what I do like about the alternate mode, or vehicle mode, or mobile armor modes, not really the model itself, but the Kotobukiya stand that they supply, because there's the base of the connector is actually on a ball joint, so that it allows you to position the model in this form in different poses, or sort of different angles, and it's a really tight ball joint. So the weight of the model, though actually the weight of the model is not very much, it's very light. It doesn't cause this to bend under gravity or anything. So I really like this basic design for a stand. It's nothing too fancy, but this one component is something that makes me really like it a lot, and so that's a nice thing to see. So overall, the model, I'll just say right now, I cannot recommend it. It has too many flaws in my eyes, for this model to be sort of worth the price you're paying, which again is 3,000 yen, or 30 American dollars essentially. It basically has the flaw of being too fragile and cheap feeling. That comes from the sort of numerous components that you have to put together to create this model. It's great in terms of a concept, like Kotobukiya wanted this to be sort of closer to accuracy out of the box than a Bandai high-grade kit. The only thing is that they kind of fail, because despite all the different colored plastics you get, and despite the few pre-painted parts, you still have to do more work in terms of detail painting. So I mean, I don't know why they bothered to advertise it as a pre-painted model when they can't really deliver well on it. It's not like they can fool people. Once one person gets this model and takes a look at it when it's assembled, and they look at the model and then they look at the line art from the anime or whatever, or the video game art, and they'll see that not all the parts are colored correctly. So that's just too bad. They shouldn't have advertised it that way, and I think maybe that's part of the reason why they stopped listing that, or as far as I know. And in the newer model kits, I didn't see that tagline of pre-painted model. Now, so we have the looseness, the fragility, and the sort of, I guess, somewhat false advertising aspect of it. And also, I'll mention again the pricing. It's not worth $30. I'm sorry, but it just doesn't do anything well. It doesn't do anything spectacularly. As a model, it fails. As a design, it's very pedestrian. It's very plain, very generic. I personally like the design, but as someone trying to offer a more sort of unbiased view, the average person who's into mecha these days, they're not going to love the R1 design. It's a little too retro, old school, too derivative of basically Gundam designs that already exist. It's not anything that's exciting. So with that in mind, the actual visuals is not very inspiring, unfortunately. And so yeah, I mean, that's pretty much my thoughts on it. It's just too fragile, too loose, parts fall off all the time. You can't even pose it without something falling off. Sometimes you can't even lift it up without something falling off because it's just so loose, and you tap it the wrong way, something just falls off and you have to readjust it. So it's a snap together kit, but you're probably going to have to glue some parts on, and which I may do in a while. I'm not sure when. I don't even know if I want to go through the effort of getting this model painted, because if I paint a model, I want to go the whole 9 yards and prime it, give it proper paint. And with this model, I just don't know if it deserves that effort and time that I'll have to invest. So overall, yeah, unless you're a super Robot Wars fan, and particularly an R1 mecha fan, there's no reason to get this, because it's just not worth the money you have to pay. It's not worth the time and effort you have to spend to put it together. It's just a very flawed execution of a decent idea. Now, with that being said, that's the end of this review. But I have 2 other Super Robot Wars models, also from the 1 to 144 scale range, from Kotobukiya, that I'll be reviewing. The R2 powered, and the R-1. Now, I'll just bring them into the camera now, just to give you guys a bit of a preview. So there's the R2 powered. Ew, okay. And here's the R-1. Now, the good news is, while the R1 in the middle here is something I can't recommend, I have, not the greatest experience with, the R2 powered and the R-1, which were models that came out after the R1, these are, they were pleasant surprises, especially the R-1, which came out earlier this year. So, I'm not giving up on Super Robot Wars at all, by any means. I really enjoy Kotobukiya's products. They bring in some franchises that are definitely, they're a great alternative to Gundam. So I'm going to continue on reviewing the non-Bandai products here, and I'll be going to other Bandai products in the future, but non-Gundam. So I mean, that's it for the R1 review, and again, we'll be seeing more of these 2 mechs in the future. So yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope this helps someone. Honestly, I hope this helps someone avoid purchasing the R1. However, I haven't given up on the R1. I actually have purchased the 1 to 100 scale version of this model kit, because I did some research, and it looks like the 1 to 100 scale model of the R1 improves, or fixes rather, everything that the 1 to 144 scale did wrong, and it has a few extra things in it that I think will be good. So I give a thumbs down to the R1 1 to 144 scale, but hopefully when I get the 1 to 100 scale version in the future and assemble it, I'll do a review of it, and hopefully by the end of that review I'll be able to give it sort of my recommendation. But for now, avoid the R1, simply not worth it. Again, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time with another review.